Morning folks, Santosinno Trail report from very close to Santosinno Peak. Today's the 2nd of March 2020, Monday. I think it's about 10:30 in the morning. Here you can probably recognise the summit hut just below Santosinno Peak because it's a little bit rough at the peak, as you can see around behind me. It's currently snowing fairly steadily, fairly heavily. Has been all morning. I hiked up from Idlewild first thing this morning, and forecasters had a bit of a challenge with this storm. It was supposed to give us maybe an inch or two, mainly yesterday afternoon, perhaps a little bit overnight. Instead, most of it actually more or less did do that, but then most of the storm has actually come through this morning. I hiked up through at Idlewild. There was we had about just over an inch of snow, most of that from yesterday. Humber Park about 2 inches, Saddle Junction close to 3, and then in the high country by Wellman Divide there was about 5 inches, pretty much the same at 10,000 feet, and probably now getting close to 6 inches here at Santosinno Peak. It kind of comes and goes. Get the feeling it's probably getting close to finishing, but I'll obviously check those numbers again on the way back down. But definitely in the order of sort of 4 to 6 inches in most of the certainly mid to upper elevations. So that's considerably more than was forecast. In terms of gear, I actually hiked all the way up with no gear, with no spikes. Poles were very useful, but in the soft powder it was pretty good traction, so decent boots were fine. The expectation was that this would melt off within a day or two, because it's supposed to turn very warm, as much as mid-60s in Idlewild by tomorrow, and that's going to last for several days, for basically the rest of this week. Obviously this has ended up being 2, 3, 4 times the volume of snow that they were forecasting, so on balance that melt off as quickly as anticipated is probably not going to happen, but it will be melting quickly during the course of this week. That will affect what you can use in terms of gear, certainly on the consolidated trails once they get some traffic on them, like Devil's Slide Trail, maybe Lower Deer Springs Trail. It's quite likely that some micro spikes will be handy. In theory, you could probably use snowshoes, certainly above maybe 9,500 feet, but potentially literally only for the next couple of days, and then that'll be it. Crampons could be useful high up, but they're certainly no more necessary than micro spikes. It'll be a case of just how quickly it all melts off. All of that said, there are fairly firm forecasts for some interesting looking storms the following week, so starting about Saturday the 7th, off and on for potentially a week, through currently the forecasts are only through to about the 11th or 12th, but maybe even beyond that, and talking a similar volume of snow that we've just received, maybe even more, but we're not going to know that until we get closer to it. So that will obviously, again, we're going to be in this pattern where we have some melting and then a bit more snow and then maybe some more melting. So that will affect gear choices. In terms of Pacific Crest Trail hikers, right now, spikes are probably not essential, because you're basically going to be going through the powder. Of course, the big issue is all the trails have basically been wiped out by this fresh snow. It's pretty windy, as you can probably tell, and so my tracks, even from just popping up to the peak just now and back down, have largely disappeared already with the spindrift. So that's going to be a problem on places like Fuller Ridge, in particular, and that might remain the case for a couple of days. Temperature just now, it was the wind chill was about -11 at the peak. That's, I think, about -23, -24 centigrade, with an air temperature of about 12 Fahrenheit. I think that's about losing track there. I think about -13, 14 centigrade, something like that. Northwest wind, actually fairly mellow most of the time, but gusting close to 30 miles an hour. And that's about it for right now. Always a beautiful day up here at San Jacinto Peak, and safe hiking, folks.